an assignment beyond that one. She said, this year on the 250th, I want you not only to read Douglas's oration, I want you to write a message to the United States on the occasion of the 250th. Now, you understand, Ms. Hearne is one of my bosses. She's one of the trustees at New Millennium Church. So I work for her. And so when one of the bosses tells a Baptist preacher, do something, I had the ability to do it. So here's what I have written. July 4, 2026, Little Rock, Arkansas. My fellow Americans, I offer these words today after having first read aloud and publicly the matchless words Frederick Douglass delivered on Monday, July 5, 1852 at Rochester, New York. My regard for the comfort and patience of the listening audience impels me to limit my assessment about the semi-quincentennial. Another reason for brevity is because my sentiments about the current condition of the United States cannot be expressed in one setting. I begin by thanking Garbo Hearne and Dr. Archie Hearne for Pyramid Art, Books, and Custom Framing, the site of our gathering. I thank them for the invitation to read the words of Mr. Douglass and share my feeble commentary, and I thank each of you for your presence and kind attention. You've heard me read the words of Frederick Douglass, spoke one day short of 174 years ago. Before I share my own assessment about the state of U.S. democracy on this 254th of July, I ask your indulgence to hear words written by another, and certainly more noteworthy observer, about what he termed the tenacious issue of equality of our society. The January 1969 issue of Playboy magazine contained an opinion article titled A Testament of Hope. It was written by Martin Luther King Jr. and published posthumously. There's a copy of the book on the table as you walked in. It is beginning at pages 313 to 328. A Testament of Hope is a compendium of Dr. King's writings, speeches, and interviews that was edited by James Melvin Washington, a King scholar. Listen to these excerpts of the last essay that King wrote that was published after his death. Quote, why is the issue of equality still so far from solution in America? A nation that professes itself to be democratic, inventive, hospitable to new ideas, rich, productive, and awesomely powerful. The problem is so tenacious because despite its virtues and attributes, America is deeply racist and its democracy is flawed, both economically and socially. All too many Americans believe justice will unfold painlessly or that its absence for black people will be tolerated tranquilly. Justice for black people will not flow into society merely from court decisions, nor from fountains of political oratory. Nor will a few token changes quell all the tempestuous yearnings of disadvantaged black people. White America must recognize that justice for black people cannot be achieved without radical changes in the structure of our society. The comfortable, the entrenched, the privileged cannot continue to tremble at the prospect of change in the status quo. When millions of people have been cheated for centuries, restitution is a costly process. Inferior education, poor housing, unemployment, inadequate health care, each is a bitter component of the oppression that has been our heritage. Each will require billions of dollars to correct. Justice so long deferred has accumulated interest, and its cost for the society will be substantial in financial as well as human terms. King then wrote later, quote, the price of progress would have been high enough at the best of times, But we are in an agonizing national crisis because a complex of profound problems has intersected in an explosive mixture. Schools, transportation, water supply, traffic, and crime would have been municipal agonies whether or not Negroes lived in our cities. The anarchy of unplanned city growth was destined to confound our confidence. What is unique to this period is our inability to arrange an order of priorities that promises solutions that are decent and just. It is time that we stopped our blithe lip service to the guarantees of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. These fine sentiments are embodied in the Declaration of Independence. But that document was always a declaration of intent rather than of reality. There were slaves when it was written. There were still slaves when it was adopted. And to this day, Black Americans have not life, liberty, nor the privilege of pursuing happiness. And millions of poor white Americans are in economic bondage that is scarcely less oppressive. The question that now faces us is whether we can turn the Negro's disillusionment and bitterness into hope and faith in the essential goodness of the American system. If we don't, our society will crumble. This is not a nation of venal people. It is a land of individuals who, in the majority, have not cared, who have been heartless about their black neighbors because their ears are blocked and their eyes blinded by the tragic myth that Negroes endure abuse without pain or complaint. Even when protests flared and denied the myth, they were fed new doctrines of inhumanity that argued that Negroes were arrogant, lawless, and ungrateful. Habitual white discrimination was transformed into white backlash. But for some, the lies had lost their grip, and internal disquiet grew. Poverty and discrimination were undeniably real. They scarred the nation. They dirtied our honor and diminished our pride. An insistent question defied evasion. Was security for some being purchased at the price of degradation for others? Everything in our tradition said this kind of injustice was the system of the past or of other nation, yet there it was, abroad in our own land. Thus was born, particularly in the young generation, a spirit of dissent that ranged from superficial disavowal of the old values, which he identified as militarism, racism, and materialism, to total commitment to wholesale, drastic, and immediate social reform. Yet all of it was dissent. Their voice is still a minority, but united with millions of black protesting voices, it has become a sound of distant thunder increasing in volume with the gathering of storm clouds. This dissent is America's hope. Today's dissenters tell the complacent majority that the time has come when further evasion of social responsibility in a turbulent world will court disaster and death. America has not changed because so many think it need not change. But this is the illusion of the damned. America must change. Those were King's words. You don't hear that during MLK speeches. King's perspective before he was murdered 58 years ago was that America must change or be damned by the illusion that it need not change. Today, 58 years later, we see that America has not changed. The election of Barack Obama in 2008 and the tenure of Kamala Harris as Vice President of the United States during the Biden presidency occurred in a society that remained in the deadly grip of racism, materialism, and militarism. Maternal morality among black women is not only high, but is being ignored by health professionals and by the nation. Public education is being defunded, privatized, and cannibalized in service to a neoconservative ideology that smacks of the Confederate States of America. We must acknowledge that witting cooperation of some privileged black people with racist, capitalist, and militarist dystopian actions is working to permeate and perpetuate systemic injustice and further inspire resentment, disillusionment, and protest. Justice Clarence Thomas is not the only example. Kay Cole James, a black woman, led the Heritage Foundation from January 2018 until March 2022. Today, she is the Secretary of the Commonwealth of Virginia. She holds the position of Secretary of State for the Commonwealth of Virginia. Their examples are repeated across the nation and in Arkansas. 58 years after King's death and 250 years after the first 4th of July, King's hope that the United States would change has not yet borne fruit. Instead, our nation is a crumbling empire suffering from its own greed, cruelty, and the incompetence of a sociopathic idiot, his pseudo-religious fascist supporters, and what Rollo May called pseudo-innocence in his 1972 book, Power and Violence, and Alan Aubrey Buzak echoed Rollo May's concern in his 1976 book titled Farewell to Innocence. We are not more free, wise, or kind now than the white men who founded this nation 250 years ago. This week's Supreme Court decisions are not the only evidence why we should question whether the nation believes in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all people, let alone whether we're willing to fight and work and even die to ensure that our descendants will live in such a society. Remember the presidential election of 2016. Remember January 6, 2021. Remember the insurrection in the U.S. Capitol. Remember the presidential election of 2024 and the tyrannical conduct by national, state, and local political leaders since 2024. Those are compelling proof that tens of millions of people in the United States do not believe in the ideal of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all people. On the 250th anniversary of the 4th of July, we will be dismissed as fools or frauds if we claim that racism, materialism, and militarism have subsided. I mean, ICE is in the streets. On the 250th anniversary of the 4th of July, we will be dismissed as fools or frauds if we claim that we have confronted and corralled the great triplets of racism, materialism, and militarism. Instead, we've added sexism, including homophobia and transphobia, imperialism, classism, technocentrism, the tech brothers, data centers, AI, and xenophobia. What King viewed as giant triplets, racism, materialism, and militarism, have been bred and fed so much that the democracy in the United States is now on the brink of ending because the giant triplets are now octuplets, being constantly fed by mass media, willful miseducation, hateful religious-inspired bigotry, naked and unparalleled greed, commercialized cruelty, and lust for domination. So each of us must now answer some compelling questions. Do we believe that the ideals of life, liberty, and justice for all persons are worthwhile for our society? Do we have the courage, the determination, and the commitment to communal well-being to work for them, to fight for them, and even suffer and die to achieve them? Crispus Attucks did, and he was the first to fall. Do we believe it 250 years later? If we will not or cannot answer yes to those questions, we will continue having 4th of July observances. We will continue hearing renditions of what Frederick Douglass said 174 years ago. Our 4th of July gatherings will be dismissed as shams. by people who recall how Americans profaned the sacrifices of millions of people across our history by political apathy, civic atrophy, and moral lunacy. Our young people and their descendants will curse our self-delusion, our insincerity, and their plight, and they will be right to do so. Now as then, in 1852, these words ring true. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke, for it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be aroused. The proprietor of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed. And its crimes against God and men must be proclaimed and denounced. And so on this 250th anniversary, I borrow from Frederick Douglass and pose this question. What to the American indigenous, Black, Latino, Asian Pacific, immigrant, woman, and girls, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and poor white population is our 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to them, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which they are the constant victims. To them, our celebration is a sham. Our boasted liberty an unholy license. Our national greatness swelling vanity. Our denunciation of tyrants' brass-fronted impotence. Our shouts of liberty and equality hollow mockery. Our prayers and hymns, our sermons and thanksgivings, with all our religious parade and solemnity, are to them mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes that would disgrace a nation of savages. Today, as in 1852, there is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloodier than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Go where you will, search where you may, roam through all the monarchies and despotisms of the old world, and travel through South America and search out every abuse, and when you've found the last, say, lay your facts by the side in the everyday practices of this nation. You will say, with me today, as Frederick Douglass said 174 years ago, that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, the pretentiously titled United States of America still reigns without a rival until we admit that this is who we are. We will never be free or just. We will simply be the biggest and most dangerous curse on the world.